We need to start on time. So where's the wrap? Renee.
I should start?
We're going to begin, everyone. Please take a seat.
Okay. Ready? Okay. So my name is Ernest Guenzburger. Guenzburger in German. My wife Ellen and I have been members of Monmouth Reformed Temple for many years. My two children, Sarah and Sam, went to Hebrew school here and had their B'nai Mitzvahs here as well. I want to give a shout out to my daughter who's in Oregon on live stream, and to my mother who's in Toms River. Okay. And I'm a first-generation American, as both my parents were born in Germany and came to America right before the war. My father, Heinz Guenzburger, came from a small town in the Black Forest area called Hemsbach, and my mother, whose maiden name is Ruth Bacharach, is from a small city in the Hesse region called Fulda. The idea for this talk came about after I shared with the rabbi and the cantor a video of my trip to Germany to attend a conference for the descendants of the people of Fulda. The purpose of the conference was not to apologize for the atrocities of the Holocaust, but was very factual as to what took place. The history was not sugar-coated, and the events were presented to us exactly as it happened. It was a learning experience for both the returning Jews and for the German citizens. The conference took place in September of 2023. The city offered a small stipend per family to encourage any living descendants to attend the conference, and my daughter Sarah and her then boyfriend and now husband Marcus went, and I attended along with my brother, his wife, and his two children. The Guenzburgers were 7 of the approximately 150 people that attended. Most of the people were from Israel, but there were people from all over the world. When Jews were able to flee Fulda to escape the Nazis, they went wherever they were allowed to go. The original families that lived in Fulda were mostly Orthodox Jews, and the families that came back to attend were still Orthodox. The film I am about to show you documents the highlights of the conference. The film is narrated by Anya Listman, who is the second from the right. That's my daughter all the way to the right, Sarah, her now husband Marcus, and myself. And this was at a dinner that the town had for us that I'm going to have trouble reading. You should turn the lights back up. Okay. And Anya is partially paid to do the Jewish heritage for the town. And most towns in Germany do have someone who studies Jewish heritage. She spends a lot of time looking at family genealogy, and she put together my family's genealogy as well. So it was interesting how we found out about the conference. Of course, my mother's maiden name is Bacharach, and I'm Guenzburger, so the town couldn't find me. So about 10 years ago, with the help of Google, my brother received an email from a man known as Peter Schmitz in Germany. Let's see how this works. And that's Peter, and that's his wife, Hanukkah. And he told us that they were coming to New York City and Hanukkah is the daughter of one of my grandfather's brothers. This was totally unknown to me at the time. In 1938, Hanukkah's father was told he was about to be arrested, so he fled Germany to Belgium, where Hanukkah was born. After the war, they moved back to Germany. I didn't know that they existed. So we met in New York City, and it was a very warm and touching experience. So Peter is a history buff, and I'm going to read passages later, but he put together this book about the Guenzburgers, and it's very extensive. So a few years after meeting in New York City, my brother went to New York and met with Peter and Hanukkah in Germany. They traveled to my father's town of Hemsbach. While in Hemsbach, Peter suggested that they go to my mother's hometown of Fulda. And they didn't know Anya at the time, but they researched who was in charge of studying the Jewish heritage for Fulda and found Anya. So they went to Anya, and she told my brother that they're planning a conference in 2023, and she would forward us the information. I can only assume that the people who went to the conference searched her out. I don't think they looked for descendants. I think the descendants were interested in trying to find their descendants. So a little background on my mother's side of the family. This is my grandfather's family. They're from a small town called Rena, which is about a 20-minute drive from Fulda. You could see there were 6 girls and 3 boys, and they were very poor. The family had lived in this town for hundreds of years. My grandfather's name is Solomon. He's the guy all the way to the left, and to his left in the middle is Hugo. That's one of his brothers. So the family was poor, and since the great-grandfather who's there, my great-grandfather, had no money for a dowry, he sent all the daughters to live in America where you didn't have to have a dowry to get married. They left early in the 1920s, and this was important because in the late 1930s, when you needed to be sponsored and have an affidavit to get into the country, the 6 girls, the 6 daughters were able to sponsor those that remained. So my grandfather eventually married my grandmother Nellie through an arranged marriage, and they moved from Rena to Fulda, which is that 20-minute distance. They lived in an apartment and had a small business selling oils and lubricants for machine equipment. This is where my mother was born. Oops. That's my mom. And as anti-Semitism grew worse in Germany and my mother was no longer allowed to go to school or play on the playgrounds, they applied for a visa to come to America. The visa came through in 1937, and my mother's side of the family that was still in Fulda emigrated to New York. They left behind all their possessions, and my mother, not speaking English, came to America and started school in New York City. With that background, Sam, you want to start the film, or do I start this?
As a city of Fulda, we feel honored to welcome you as guests who have their family roots here in Fulda. I would like to thank you for taking up our invitation and spending a few days here in Fulda, and we are really delighted to be able to look forward to greeting all in all about 150 guests, among others from Israel, the USA, the Netherlands, Brazil, Mexico, and other countries all over the world meeting here in our city. 45 meeting here in our city. Everyone who is going on the tour, which starts as 2:45 with Mr. Imhoff am Stockhaus, please follow Mr. Heiler, Thomas Heiler. He will bring you to the place am Stockhaus. Everyone else who is on my tour, please follow me. Thank you. We are right now at the Old Jewish Cemetery. And what I will give you today is an insight of Jewish history, Jewish heritage, the good one, the interesting one, and also the very sad chapter of Fulda history. And I tried to give you this insight within 90 minutes. But of course, I could talk for hours, days, and weeks. So this is just a short glimpse of the Jewish heritage. But if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask or ask me later. But this is only a little tiny bit of history of the Jewish cemetery. Okay? Then we go to the little room.
So this is Google Translate.
This building stands on the ground of the cemetery of the Holy Community of Fulda.
There had been 1908, so in 1938 they wanted to tear out the cemetery, but then they realized that there was too much. wouldn't think so. Is he like dumplings?
So interesting. Terrible. Well, he says to me, he wrote.
What you see here in front of you is the Jewish Community House, built in 1902. And when you go to the left side, you will see the area of the synagogue, where the synagogue stood. So the place where we are standing is the center of Jewish history in Fulda, because the first shul was here, the first, like the apartment of the rabbi, a mikveh, everything. And I found a map in the archive dated from 1797, and it describes the situation from the 1740s. So it's amazing to know. I can tell you, here was the Männer Schule, like for the men. Here was the women's school. There was a courtyard. This area, including this building, this was all the synagogue area. In 1938, during Kristallnacht, the synagogue was burned down, like almost every synagogue in Germany. What they did in 2010 is a memorial here with the names of the ones who were deported from Fulda.
Tochter.
Please tell me if I'm wrong, but what
5 Jahre.
unites us, like I'm from the perpetrator nation.
Gemordet geworden in Auschwitz.
And one of my grandfathers, he was in the SA.
5 Jahre.
I know the SA, so I don't know what he did, but probably he did.
Talk about what a damaged human being he is.
As soon as he could be here at a place like it's in the 20th century, the Jewish community grew, and what they built in 1900 and 1902 are 3 buildings. The one you see to your right, the large house, this is the Villa Kahn, where Rabbi Kahn lived with tenants, like they lived there in this building. Across the villa of the rabbi, you can see behind the trees a red brick stone building. This is today's Jewish community, and it was the Jewish school, not shul, but school. And they built it in 1902, and kids were going there to school. And it was vandalized during Kristallnacht, and there exist 2 pictures with books thrown out of the windows. And the third building we will pass by is the red and white building you see in front of us. And it was also built in 1902, and the Jewish community bought it to have a home for the elder in Fulda. And this building is exactly the same as it was when it was built. And it's kind of tragic that we end the main tour with this building, because the last living members of the Jewish community were deported on September 5th from this building.
We have all gathered here today at the Old Jewish Cemetery to commemorate the lives of the 73 Jews that lost their lives 81 years ago. Today, on the 5th of September 1942, 73 members of the Jewish community from Fulda were deported and cruelly oppressed. This harrowing chapter of history is inseparably linked to the Holocaust, the systematic genocide in which millions of innocent people have lost their lives. The deportation of Jews was a terrible act of discrimination and extermination that we must not forget. This dark period calls on us to learn important lessons from the past, to preserve the memory of the victims, and to stand together here to ensure that this act of history is never repeated.
That's why we are here. We want to remember the terrible events of the Nazi era, as well as the many victims who were mercilessly deported to their deaths. neighbors, friends, or even relatives who were simply torn out of the middle of their lives. Therefore, it is absolutely necessary to prevent something like this from happening again, in whatever form. This is what we, the project group, are committed to, that no event, but most importantly, no person is forgotten. These were their names.
Walter Hirschein, Antjen Hommel, Frieda Katz, Moses Katz, David Katzenstein, Rosa Katzenstein, Karl Kneip, Paula Kohn, Philipp Kohn, Emil Moses.
Frieda Stern, Gustav Gabriel Stern, Katinka Stern, Lina Stern, Samuel Stern.
Sarah Stern, Dina Stiefel, Dorothea Stiefel, Betty Tannenbaum, Clara Tannenbaum.
Dilla Dina Feldheim, Jakob Isaak Feldheim, Esther Erna Freudenthal, Selma Freund, Lara Freund Fischl, Therese Ansbacher, Emilie Bacharach, Willi Wolf Bacharach, Ida Bär, Selichot, Henriette Gerolstein, Jenny Goldschmidt, Josef Goldschmidt, Meta Goldschmidt, Silly Kraudems,
Bertha Braun, Maya Braun, Hanna Kohn, Kinka Sywiakowski und Helene Eschwege.
Ernestina Tannenberg, Jonas Tannenberg, Jakob Weinberg, Caroline Weinberg, Jutta Wiesberg, Bertha Wiesenberg, Betty Wiesenberg.
Fanny Adler, Helene Caroline Adler, Hermann Adler, Max Mordecai Ansbacher, Salomon Ansbacher.
Mina Plaut, David Rabinowitz, Adelheid Rosenberg, Maya Rosenberg, Max Philipp Sachs.
Jäckchen Selig, Hugo Sicher, Eduard Sonder, Abraham Son, Sophie Schaumberg-Spiro, Jakob Grünewald, Marianne Grünewald, Maya Heller, Lina Hessdorfer, Betty Hirschmann. These were their names.
Bernhard, and Corpus, oder? It's Joanna, Alicia, and the kids.
Max, ich glaube, der gleich just doch.
Okay, so this is the marriage certification.
When did they get married?
If I can.
That's 1915, no meio da guerra.
In morning, yeah, sometimes it's even at 3 o'clock in the morning. A boy was born, and that child got the name Benno. And this is, again, it's signed from Herman to...
You know what's amazing? And she was born when her mother died in childhood. She's the only daughter. It's all tragic.
Gaststätte?
A guest house?
Yeah, a guest house, something like this. And this is a hairdresser.
Oh, yeah? I don't need it.
Yeah.
Dat did a good Fragen machen.
Of the tone? Do they live in Guestwick?
בליל ד' לא, בליל ד' זה עוף של הגליל זה
Okay, so I remember that photo. I couldn't find it, I would have brought it. Yeah, so that was before the first day at school. They don't do that in the U.S. But, as mentioned by Ray a minute ago, I can only imagine what my father would have thought that I'm speaking, that I'm actually back in Fulda, and then speaking for a group of this size about his life here. And you couldn't imagine that he would ever think such things would be possible.
Simmer with eggs, delicious.
Over Goldmeier, and you are related to Goldmeier Esther, right?
Well, my father was my friend, his father was Nathan.
Yeah.
That's probably Nathan.
That's probably Nathan. This is Esther. That's her husband. Her husband's name is Meyer. This is Emmanuel.
Okay, I knew him.
Yeah.
He came to Chicago.
Right.
Yeah.
So it starts with Meyer and Esther to have the descendants. So, and you can use the computer, you can have it, you can scroll, I will open everything, so you can do your research. So who is the ones who claim for restitution? So it's Goldmeier, Max and Manfred. And they have their address in Chicago, Illinois.
My mother and father had 2 children. She passed away and she was cremated. John and jail is
I don't have an option to...
Okay, that's okay.
We have now a very special time of the year.
Eine Woche, alle Juden von ganzer Welt, ich würde sagen, alle Menschen von ganzer Welt, haben Rosh Hashanah.
So next week Rosh Hashanah starts, and it's not only for the Jewish communities worldwide, I would say it's a new beginning for everyone worldwide.
Wir haben gerade eine ganz besondere Woche erlebt zusammen.
We just experienced a very special week together.
Wir haben viel mit Geschichte gelernt in dieser Zeit.
We learned a lot about history.
Wir haben uns besser kennengelernt, verschiedene Leute von ganzer Welt, meistens Juden.
We get to know each other
way better in the last days, from face to face and from all over the world.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak, to say a short about Torah. So as we approach Rosh Hashanah, next Shabbat will be Rosh Hashanah. So let's be strong in our Judaism and let's make our ancestors proud. And Shalom al Israel, peace in Israel.
Oh, and Frieden in Israel.
Amen.
Yeah, amen.
Und Bella und Jana auch, sie wollen jetzt Shabbat kämpfen.
So maybe you remember that scene in the archive, this gentleman here. So this is an interesting story, but on the second day of the conference, we all sat in a circle and we talked about who was our relative from the town of Fulda. And when we said that our grandfather, Solomon Bacharach, was from Rena and moved to Fulda, this man jumped up all excited. And he said, we're related. He said my mother and corresponded with her uncle Hugo for years. That was the man that was in the middle of the picture that I showed previously. Their family name is Rosenheck. And we had dinner with them a few times, and since the conference is over, we've Zoomed with them, and we hope to someday visit them, and they're from Rio de Janeiro. Oops. This has to go the other way. Okay, I got it. Everybody received, they showed this, but the town prepared one of these genealogy posters for everybody. They were around 30 inches by 30 inches. And by studying ours, I could see how I was related to the Rosenhecks. So you remember this scene with the march through town. This was one of the most moving events of the conference. It was organized by Anya and the high school students there. They were not Jewish, and they read the names of the deported Jews, and we each carried a poster with the name of one person that was deported. This was the third deportation from Fulda, and the last one. We were escorted through the town by armed guards, because in Germany, as in our country, not everybody has the same opinion about bringing descendants back and supporting them. So these are stones, you find stones from the cemetery around town. When they destroyed the cemetery in town, people took the stones and they used them for fences and for foundations. And when Anya drives through the countryside and sees something like this, she tries to pick them up and put them in a place that's more appropriate for that. I say my journey to find my roots. So towards the end of the conference, I rented a car and we traveled to Rena, where my grandfather was born, to find the house he grew up in. We had a picture of the house, and a man in town brought us to the house. This is the house that had 9 kids, grandparents, parents. I don't know how they all lived in that house. So you could see they must have been rather poor. And you can see that the woman who lives in the house came out when that's my brother and I, we were getting our picture in front of the house. She didn't speak English. She asked us what we were doing, and we told her we were Jews, and our grandfather used to live there. And she said her parents bought the house from Juden, and she still has the deed. So we didn't go into the house. I sort of wanted to. And across the street from their house, there used to be the synagogue. That synagogue was burned down on Kristallnacht, and they built that community center. The community center has a plaque on the wall that says that the synagogue was burned down on Kristallnacht. So the next day, Sarah, Marcus, and myself, we rented a car. I kept the rented car, and we traveled to Hemsbach. This is where my father's from. And this is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I never saw anybody in town. The streets were always empty. The houses are beautiful. There's no candy wrappers or cigarette butts on the ground. It's a very beautiful town, and you can see the houses are very close together. It's sort of like a medieval town. So the Guenzburger family owned and operated a cigar rolling factory. And it was a rather large cigar rolling factory. It employed a lot of people in the town. They imported tobacco from all over the world, and they also grew tobacco in Hemsbach. So I was going to read a portion from this book that Peter Schmitz wrote about the cigar rolling factory. The cigar manufacturing was important to the local economy. The tobacco factory of Moses Feltzer, that Feltzer is my grandmother's maiden name, was first started, and it employed 30 people. By 1926, the number had already increased to 110 and to 130 by 1928. Around 1920, son Theodor Feltzer, that's my father's uncle, and son-in-law Ernst Guenzburger, my grandfather, took over the factory. Moses died in 1927. His wife Ida followed 2 years later. In 1928, Ernst and Theodor took on the adjacent cigar factory called Sternheimer Brettheimer, and by doing so became the most important business in town, employing 180 people. The importance of the factory in Hemsbach can be appreciated if one considers that the total population of Hemsbach was around 3,300. Let's see. So when the Jews of Hemsbach could no longer attend public school, my grandmother decided that since she did not know what would happen to the family, my father should learn a trade that he could take with him anywhere in the world and get a job. So they sent my father to a Jewish trade school where he learned the trade of cabinet making. So that became very important in his life as well as mine. So the Jewish Heritage Liaison person in Hemsbach is Marita Spica-Jordan. She's a wonderful person. She showed us my father's house, which you see here, And that's really quite a house for the 1900s. So this is back from the book. The Guenzburger family lived at 1 Pumpwerk Street, and even after being sold in 1940, the house was referred to as Villa Guenzburger. The children, Lottie and Heinz, spent a happy and problem-free childhood. They had many non-Jewish friends who were welcome to the house. The villa is still in idyllic condition. Today's owners, who is unrelated to the buyers of 1940, renovated the villa with respect to the care of the building. The property almost reached City Hall. I don't know where City Hall is. Behind the house was a big garden with a pond, which the children called a lake. In the middle of the pond was an island, which was only reachable by boat. The children liked to play there and gave their fantasy free rein. In the summers, they paddled to the island, and in the winter, they ice skated around the pond. In front of the garage, there was a swing, which was well used by Lottie, that's my father's sister, and her friends. Okay. That's the other side of the house. So this is the synagogue in Hemsbach. The synagogue was not burned on Kristallnacht because it was physically attached, as in a medieval town, to one of the neighbors' residences. The owner of the adjacent residence, who wasn't Jewish, pleaded to not burn down the synagogue since his house would also burn, and thus this synagogue was spared. This is the exterior of the building. The 3 windows on the right is the synagogue. The door goes into like the rabbi's house and offices. So the synagogue's on a courtyard, and across the courtyard, this building has the mikveh in it. This is Sarah looking at the mikveh, wondering, what the heck do you do down there? And this is a plaque inside the mikveh that has the name of all the people in the town that died in the Holocaust and where they were murdered. So this is the interior of the synagogue. I can't say if the painting was original. That recess in the middle obviously housed the ark. My father's uncle took the Torah out of the ark after Kristallnacht and brought the Torah to America, and that Torah is in the synagogue in Toms River. So this is now the government building, but one of the other families in Hemsbach was Rothschild, and this is a summer house for one of the Rothschild's family. It's quite a house. So on the gallery of the synagogue, where the women would be on the upper level, they had posters of 3 Jewish families from Hemsbach. One of the posters was the Rothschild family. And the other one of them was my family. This is the Feltzer-Guenzburger family. Surprising to me, they had my family tree there. And as you can see, my name is on the bottom, along with Ellen and my brother and his kids. So it was surprising for me to see that. Ironically, I've been a member here for 25 years, and you can't find my name anywhere here. But I can go to Germany, and I can find my family tree there. It was it's nowhere to be found. Yeah. All right. Yeah. And there's nobody to ask why they had those posters. I don't know, maybe they want to show that life goes on. I wasn't sure, but it was touching for me. So one of the pictures on this poster, I don't know how they got it, but that's my family. The little boy in the front is my father, my grandfather, and my grandmother on the upper right. That's his cousin Margot, who came to America with, and his sister Lottie is next to him. So my father and Margot came when they were teenagers to the United States without their parents in 1938. My grandfather, Ernst, was arrested on Kristallnacht and sent to jail. His visa came through while in jail, and he was let out. So I'm going to read from the book. I don't know if this is totally accurate, but this is what Peter Schmitz found. Why did Ernst and his brother-in-law hold on to the cigar factory for so long? Their kids had already managed to leave Germany. Their relatives in Emmendingen had already sold the cigar factory of Guenzburger and Company to a Swiss entrepreneur. That factory in Emmendingen, which isn't that far away, had 1,000 employees. Yet the Pfälzer Guenzburger one in Hemsbach stayed afloat until early 1938. As the largest employer in Hemsbach, they were useful. The Volksgenossen, or countrymen, wanted it to stay open. When in 1933 a few SA radicals in Hemsbach vandalized the Pfälzer workshop, the workers told them quickly to get out. Supported by their co-workers, Ernst and Theodor withstood political pressure until 1938. Ernst and Hilda had only one goal in selling the company, and that was to leave Germany. Their relatives in Chicago had already been housing my father, Heinz, since earlier in the year. They were issued an affidavit allowing them to come to the United States. The events of November 10th, 1938, that's Kristallnacht, almost hindered their escape. In the night of November 10th, Ernst and Hilda were staying in Stuttgart to pick up their visa at the American consulate. Ernst, like all the Jewish men, was deported to the concentration camp Dachau. Hilda stayed with friends in Stuttgart. They entrusted some money to the son of a good friend in order to not be empty-handed in case of sudden exit. The displaced citizens of Jewish faith no longer had the rights over their own money. When that sudden moment arrived, that son who had the money denied ever having received any money from them. Hilda drove to Dachau and was able to rescue Ernst from the concentration camp by showing their visa, and they never saw Hemsbach again. Okay. So then we went, this is the cemetery in Hemsbach. It's really beautiful. It's overgrown, as most of the cemeteries in Germany are, as the state doesn't take care of them. So the townspeople have to, and they just let the nature take over. And the cemetery goes back probably 500-600 years. There's very old tombstones there. And then some of anyone with the name of Pfälzer, I get, would be related distantly. So these plaques, this is in the street in Hemsbach. Some towns put brass plaques in the street in front of a house where someone died in the Holocaust. Not every town does it, but the town of Hemsbach does, and they put the name and the dates that they lived there and when they died. So once in America, the Jewish agency lent money to my parents and to buy a farm in Tom's River, where land was extremely cheap at the time. They were told to become chicken farmers. The family struggled to learn the ways of chicken farming, but was grateful to be in America. I think it's kind of ironic that this man, a few months before this, had a factory with 200 people, and now he's plucking chicken feathers. It's quite a change. When World War II started, my father, who was not a citizen, signed up to join the Army. His cabinet-making skills proved useful as he was placed in the Army Corps of Engineers. They constructed various facilities and such, and the Army made good use of my father's carpentry skills. As the war progressed, my father served in North Africa and later landed on the beaches of Normandy as part of the invasion. Luckily, he survived the war and returned to Toms River, where his mother told him there's no future in chicken farming, and she was right. You should build yourself a shop, which he did. And after many additions and renovations and a fire in 1992, the shop continues to make cabinets at the same location. In 1992, I left working as an architect in New York and took over my father's shop. Many of you know me for the projects which I've built around the temple, like the lectern I'm speaking from, the doors to the sanctuary, the display case in the lobby, and the Torah stand. They are a part of our continuing legacy. I consider my family one of the lucky ones, as both parents survived the Holocaust. When I look at the sanctuary and the furniture the business created, it is in honor to the legacy of the Jewish trade school and my father. We as Jews must honor and remember those whose lives were interrupted by the Holocaust and should remember to tell the story of those who perished, like the Jews of Fulda. So that's it. Thank you.
So we're going to have time. First of all, I want to thank you for such an extraordinary journey. For us to return with you to both your mother and your father and your grandparents' towns was so important for all of us in knowing who you are and where you came from and what kind of people you came from. So we're going to take a couple moments of questions and answers, and I'll be running around with a handheld mic. If anyone wants to turn on the lights. Does anyone have a question? Is everyone just trying to process? It's a lot to process.
You're welcome.
Ernie, how many towns or cities in Germany did this kind of thing that Fulda did? Is it unique or is it fairly common?
I don't know if I have the total answer to this. I only talked to one other woman that went to a conference for descendants in another city. Otherwise, it wasn't anything I was familiar with.
This is about 50 years ago. Both my parents came from Germany in two different towns. My father from Hünfeld, which is not far from Fulda, and my mother from Langenselbold. And most of their friends and relatives around 50 years ago got invited back to the towns to make amends. Some of my parents' friends went. My parents didn't want to go. But my question is about the cemetery. It said New Jewish Cemetery. What happened to the old Jewish cemetery? Is it still there?
Well, they really have three cemeteries. So like in the 1600s, there was a picture of Anya holding a picture of tombstones. That was in the middle of town when the town was small. So that's the first cemetery, and that was till around the 1700s. And those are the tombstones that were taken out of the town, and they built the municipal building on that property. And if you find stones around town, it's from the really old one. So then in the 1700s, they had another cemetery outside of town, and I believe there's the new cemetery after that. Why they have that, I'm not sure.
Did they move any of the bodies from the old cemetery to the new cemetery, or they're all new? Or you don't know?
So the first cemetery the Germans built the building over the bodies and the bones of the people there. The reason they had that prayer room in the basement was somebody brought up, they built the building, and then somebody brought up the fact that you can't occupy the building, it's built on a cemetery. So the town of Fulda wrote to some Sanhedrin in Jerusalem and explained, we just finished this building, we don't know if we can occupy it, what should we do? And their answer was, build a prayer room in the basement. So they have that prayer room in the basement that's locked, except when the descendants come there, nobody uses it. But that prayer room was put there to allow them to occupy the building on top.
I went to the cemetery, Jewish cemetery in Langenselbold, and there's some organization in Europe that sends each town in Germany $10,000 a year to maintain the Jewish cemetery. I don't know what Langenselbold's doing with the money, but it's certainly not going towards the Jewish cemetery.
Yeah, Marita told me they had a storm and trees fell in the Hemsbach cemetery, and they had to go around to the townspeople and make a collection, a GoFundMe collection, to be able to even take the trees off of the tombstones. And that apparently happens in other areas also. The country, the state of Germany doesn't pay for any of that.
So we don't have time for any more questions at this time. Please, I'm going to invite everyone to enjoy a little nosh and come right back in here for a service. We can have another discussion about this. This was so fascinating, Ernie. Thank you so much.
I wanted to say that they gave me this book on Fulda when I got there. I'm going to put that in the back if you want to look at it. And this book that Peter Schmitz wrote, I'll leave it someplace if anybody wants to leaf through it. Just no food on your hands.
Thank you, Ernie.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's amazing that you have a book written about your family. So everyone, just to go right out here, make a right and a right.
I set up all the refreshments, and you don't take the picture very well, but I hear you. It was nice.
It's tough for me to tell the story.
I hope you didn't mind because it was very rewarding.
It's
And the fact that it was